In 1911, a Nobel Prize winner spiked his own food with radioactive material just to prove his landlady was serving old meat. Hungarian radiochemist Georg de Hevesy will likely be the only person in history to have both won a Nobel Prize and dissolved 2 others in acid. Born in 1885, he found himself working in a lab in Nazi-occupied Denmark during World War II when the unusual incident took place.
My work was interrupted for only 1 day during the enemy occupation of Denmark.
He wrote in typically understated language as if Nazis were nothing more than a bit of an annoyance.
When, on the morning of Denmark's occupation, I arrived in the laboratory, I found Bohr worrying about Max von Lauer's Nobel medal, which Lauer had sent to Copenhagen for safekeeping. In Hitler's empire, it was almost a capital offence to send gold out of the country, and Lauer's name being engraved into the medal, the discovery of this by the invading forces would have had very serious consequences for him.
Hevesy suggested burying the medal, but even then his colleague was worried that it could be found, so instead he decided to dissolve it in acid.
So while the invading forces marched in the streets of Copenhagen, I was busy dissolving Lauer and also James Frank's medals. After the war, the gold was recovered and the Nobel Foundation generously presented Lauer and Frank with new Nobel medals.
Hevesy would win his own Nobel Prize in 1944 for his work on the use of isotopes as tracers in the study of chemical processes. And as well as this, he did some pretty interesting personal experiments. Rewind 33 years and Hevesy may have performed the first ever tagging experiment in scientific history using radioactive material. In 1911, Hevesy was staying in Manchester at a boarding house along with physicist Ernest Rutherford. He suspected that the landlady had been recycling food right off of their plates and serving it back to them days later within new meals. What she was calling fresh goulash and hash, he suspected to be last week's scraps. At first, Hevesy gently confronted her on the topic, suggesting that it might be nice to have some fresh food for a change. And she told him that all of the food she served was
absolutely fresh, how dare you!
At this point, he escalated the situation somewhat by spiking his own food with radioactive material, as one does. Hevesy took a piece of meat from his plate and added some radioactive material before letting the landlady take the plate away. A few days later, when he returned to the meal table, he brought with him an electroscope, as all good scientists do when they mean business.
Using the electroscope...
Well, those are very poor table manners.
Using the electroscope, he proved that the hash she'd been serving up was indeed radioactive.
So unless she had her own nuclear secret going on in the kitchen, which is arguably worse, she had conclusively been taking food off their plates and then serving it back to them a few days later. Unfortunately, Hevesy didn't write up his study, so he can't claim to be the first person in history to try this kind of tagging experiment. But I'll bet his food was fresh from then on.